welcome to Whispers of Ink. I'm Machado de Assis, and now I will read one of my stories.
Let's start with the book The Farce, which is part of my novels collection. Chapter 1. Dr. Machiel's sudden melancholy became the talk of Rua de Ouvidor, between Quitanda and Gonçalves Dias streets, every afternoon from 2 to 4 o'clock. It was the main topic. People whispered about it in shops, cafes, and even in the quiet corners of theaters. After all, Machiel was only 25, an age when most people care more about love songs than sad poems. His personality matched that age. He laughed easily, enjoyed jokes, and preferred light-hearted music over serious talks. Had rather hear a duet from the Grand Duchess than solve a geometry problem. And he'd pick a Sunday at Prado Fluminense over one at the military school any day. So why this sadness? You, dear reader, might scratch your head trying to figure it out. But you, gentle lady, already know. Love. Yes, the good doctor had fallen head over heels. A sudden arrow from the winged god had struck him right in the heart. But not just anyone had caught his eye. It was the widow Six's. Her beauty turned heads wherever she went. Men followed her with their eyes, and women watched them do it. Machiel had admired her like everyone else, but it was during a ball on a certain night that everything changed. She had taken his arm, walking slowly through the room, and suddenly, with the sweetest laziness in her voice, she asked, "Doctor, why won't you visit my home? I'm at home every Thursday for visitors, but Saturdays are for friends." Come on Saturday. He promised he would. And he kept his word. His heart beat fast as he climbed the stairs to her house the next Saturday. She was alone. "I came early," he said after greeting her. "You came too late for my patience," she replied with a smile. What happened inside Machiel's heart after that cannot be fully explained. It was a mix of joy, fear, and something deeper, something he had never felt before. Something that made him forget music, forget jokes, forget even the time of day. In less than a minute, he could see all the wonders of heaven and earth gathered in one place, all of it focused inside that elegant, luxurious room. The queen of this magical space, this Calypso to his Telemachus, was looking straight at him. Her eyes weren't black, or blue, or brown. They were a rare shade, one that people often link to lasting joy and hope. They were green, like the fresh leaves of spring, and full of expression, sometimes lazy, sometimes lively, a two-edged sword she knew how to use better than most. And yet, despite this enchanting welcome, Dr. Machiel felt sad, worn out, and heartbroken. Why? Because the widow, after all those sweet beginnings, had stopped thinking about the possibility of marriage. After 5 or 6 Saturdays spent politely yawning together, she started getting sick every Saturday. So, the young doctor had to settle for the noisy crowd of Thursdays instead. The Thursday we're talking about was Ash Wednesday, definitely not a day for visitors. Still, Machiel went to Botafogo, ready to carry out a plan. He thought it was clever, even sneaky, the kind of move Machiavelli might admire. But as your honest storyteller, I must tell you the truth. It was more childish than clever. He had noticed the widow's religious habits. So he thought if he confessed his love using holy words, he could finally win her heart. She was in her dressing room, just finishing getting ready. Standing up, pulling on her gloves, and smiling at her reflection, she looked pleased with how she looked. She wasn't going out for a walk, as one might guess. She was going to visit churches. She wanted to charm God's mercy. She was a good believer, this 26-year-old lady. She went to religious events, ate fish all through Lent, believed a little in God, not much in the devil, and not at all in hell. Machado didn't believe in hell, so he had nowhere to put the devil until he solved the problem by locking him away in his heart. That devil, once trapped inside, was none other than the melancholic Machado himself. The widow's religion was more stylish than anything else. When she went to confession, it was always with a young priest. But when it came to doctors, she only trusted the old ones. She never hid the smallest physical discomfort from her doctor, just as she never confessed even the tiniest sin to her priest. "Dr. Machado?" she said, reading the card her maid handed her. "I can't see him. I'm about to leave." "Wait," she added after glancing at the mirror. "Send him in here." The order was followed. A few minutes later, Machado entered the widow's private dressing room. "I receive you in my sanctuary," she said with a smile as soon as he appeared at the door. "That's how I show you belong to the few true believers." "Oh, it's not my faith I doubt it. And I receive you standing up. I'm about to leave. I have 7 churches to visit today." "I know," Machado replied, his voice trembling. "I know how deeply religious you are. To be honest, I was afraid I might not find you here. But I had to come. Especially today." The widow caught herself just in time, pulling back a hint of a smile that had begun to reveal her thoughts. She asked the doctor coldly what time it was. "Almost 8. She adjusted her glove. "My glove's on. Just need to button it. And I still have time to tell you, on this solemn day, what I feel." "It's already buttoned," she replied. "Almost 8, you said. No time to waste. I must visit 7 churches. Would you be so kind as to walk me to the carriage?" Machado had enough sense not to lose all of it to his feelings. He stayed quiet and answered with a simple nod. They left the dressing room together, both silent. As they walked down the stairs, Machado planned to say just one word, one that would carry his whole heart with it. The carriage door opened slowly, and the footman stood there like a messenger of bad luck. "Would you like me to take you into town?" the widow asked. "Thank you, no," Machado replied. The footman shut the door and hurried to his seat. In that brief moment, the doctor leaned close and whispered to the widow. The horses began to move. The rest of his words were lost to Haran to us. Eulalia smiled at his boldness and forgave him. She leaned back, gently, against the soft cushions, and began a quiet monologue that lasted all the way to San Francisco de Paula Street. "Poor boy," she thought to herself. "It's clear he's in love with me. I didn't dislike him at first. But can I be blamed for thinking he's weak? Especially now, with that tired and lifeless look, he's just not well. He's nothing special. He seems like soft wax, easy to shape. I think he came ready to be more daring. But his courage failed him, and now he's only got good intentions left. Eulalia, Not a bad start for someone like him. But no, his kind is just plain boring. That was the shortest way to sum up the widow's thoughts. The carriage stopped at the Praça da Constituição. Eulalia stepped out, followed by the footman, and walked toward the church of São Francisco de Paula. There, she left Machel's image behind on the steps, and crossed the courtyard fully focused on her religious duty and on keeping her beautiful black dress perfectly arranged. The visit didn't last long. She still had to visit 6 more churches, walking from one to the next. The widow left without thinking of the young doctor again, and made her way to the Church of the Holy Cross. At the Church of the Holy Cross, we meet 2 new characters, Judge Araújo and his niece, Dona Fernanda Valadares. Fernanda was the widow of a congressman of the same name, who had died a year earlier. No one could say for sure whether it was from the hepatitis the doctors had found, or from a speech he gave during the budget debate. The 2 widows were close friends, and decided to visit the rest of the churches together. Fernanda wasn't as deeply connected to faith as her friend Eulalia Seixas was, but her feelings, like everything else in her life, changed depending on her heart. So as soon as they left the last church, she told Eulalia she'd come to visit her the next day to ask something important. "I can tell you right now," Eulalia replied. "Go ahead, Judge. I'll take Fernanda in my carriage." Inside the carriage, Fernanda leaned in and said, "I need to ask you something serious. You know I'm a little in love, right?" "A little? Well, maybe a lot. I think I'm really in love." "With who?" "Dr. Machiel." Eulalia's eyes widened. "Dr. Machiel, what do you think of him?" Eulalia shrugged and smiled almost sadly, which made Fernanda blush. "Don't you think he's handsome?" "He's not ugly. What really draws me to him is his sad look, the way he seems so tired. I think he must be suffering." "Have you heard anything about him?" "Me? Nothing. But I've seen him at your house. Do you think he's in love with someone?" "Maybe." "Oh, tell me everything." Eulalia didn't say anything more. She just said she didn't know much. But she agreed that the young doctor didn't look well. "Love," she said, "was like too much blood in the body, and marriage was the cure, like a sacred bloodletting. Fernanda needed that kind of cure, just like Maciel. Just don't try home remedies," she added. "No long looks or sighs. Those are just ways to pass the time, not to heal. The best medicine is the priest." Fernanda changed the subject, lifting the conversation to more spiritual and poetic heights. Her voice was soft and full of feeling. Her heart beat fast as she spoke. And Eulalia, listening to all the good things Fernanda saw in Maciel, couldn't help but say, "There's nothing like seeing someone through love." Eulalia watched as the carriage rolled down the street, the wheels clattering softly against the cobblestones. She leaned back, thoughtful. "You really think he's all that?" she asked, breaking the silence. "I do," replied Fernanda, "the widow of a congressman. I think there's something noble in him, deep, true, and pure." Eulalia gave a small shrug. "Maybe. But even if he's a good guy, what does that really mean these days? A good man is rare, sure, but is he enough?" Fernanda smiled gently. "Maybe I'm wrong. But sometimes the heart sees what it wants to see." Before Eulalia could answer, The carriage stopped. They had reached Fernanda's home on Rua de Santo Amaro. The two women said their goodbyes, and Eulalia continued on toward Botafogo. As soon as she was alone, she thought again about what Fernanda had said. She really believes it, she whispered to herself. Poor thing. He's just a boy. It was nearly 9 o'clock when Fernanda returned home. Two maids followed her inside, helping her with her coat and gloves. She went to her dressing room, changed into a robe, and then stepped into a warm bath. Afterward, she wrapped herself in soft fabric, walked into her bedroom, and sat down. A maid brought her a cup of rich chocolate. Fernanda took it in her hands and sipped slowly, savoring the warmth. She looked at herself in the mirror across the room, admiring her reflection with quiet pride. Once the cup was empty, another maid brought her prayer book. She walked to a small room with a small altar and knelt down, saying her prayers with deep respect. When she was done, she returned to her bedroom, changed into her nightgown, climbed into bed, and asked for the curtains to be drawn around her. Only when she was fully tucked in did she smile and whisper, "That silly Machado." And with that, she fell asleep. But for Machado the night was far from peaceful. After the words he had spoken at the carriage door, he felt a sudden wave of regret. He cursed himself for being so careless. He should have been more careful with how he spoke to her. There was a need for more thought, more distance. But reason wasn't in control. His nerves were on edge, and his thoughts were tangled. The old saying wasn't true for him tonight after a stormy night. The morning brings calm light. The next day would be dark and heavy. Machado smoked 2 cigars back at Bernardo's shop, one after the other. He wasn't really watching the ladies walk by, even though he stared right at them. His friends tried talking to him, but he didn't hear a word. Politics, jokes, nothing mattered. "I've closed the door for good," he muttered bitterly. By 4 in the afternoon, a friend showed up and offered a way out. The friend had just gotten good news from Carangola and asked if Machado wanted to join him there. Without thinking, Machado said yes. He had never dreamed of going to Carangola. To be honest, he probably couldn't even say where exactly it was. But he would have said yes to anywhere even England's throne or the pearls of Sri Lanka. "I've wanted to go to Carangola for a long time," Machado told his friend. "It's always called to me. I remember, even back in medical school, I felt drawn to the place." "When are we leaving?" "I'm not sure yet. Maybe in 3 weeks." 3 weeks felt like forever. Machado asked if they could leave in 8 days. They couldn't. He had to accept the 3 weeks. When he was alone again, he let out a deep breath. "Fine," he said. "I'll go there to forget and be forgotten." Then on Saturday, 2 bits of good news came. One touched the whole Christian world, or so people said. The other came straight to Machado's heart. He got a small, scented letter from the widow Sixas. It read, "I think I won't get my usual headache today. I hope you'll come by for tea." When he read those words, joy filled his soul like a hymn. This was his forgiveness. Maybe even more than that. He read the note 6 times, maybe more. It wouldn't be surprising if he even kissed it. Now, here is something important. The day before, on Friday, at 11 in the morning, Eulalia had received a letter from Fernanda. And by 2 in the afternoon, Fernanda herself had visited Eulalia at home. Fernanda's letter and her conversation with Eulalia covered the same topic, each one expanding naturally as such moments often do. People usually keep secrets locked in their hearts, but once they're out, it's rare for them to stay private for long. Fernanda told Eulalia everything she felt. Her words, full of passion and life, flowed like a river of love so powerful it might have even reached, maybe even touched, Eulalia's heart. At first, Eulalia listened with interest. Then, her attention faded into indifference. By the end, she was clearly annoyed. "What do you want me to do?" she finally asked, after an hour of listening. "Nothing," Fernanda replied. "Only encourage me. Or help you, maybe. Maybe?" Fernanda answered with a meaningful squeeze of Eulalia's hand. It was enough for the widow Sixas to understand the impact of what she had just heard. On Saturday she sent the letter we've just read. Machado received it as we saw, and that evening at his usual time, he showed up at Eulalia's house. She wasn't alone. 4 ladies and 3 gentlemen were already their regular visitors on Thursday nights. Machado walked into the room feeling a bit nervous and excited. What would he see in Eulalia's face? He didn't wait long to find out. She greeted him with her warmest smile, the one that wasn't playful or forced, but natural and sincere. If Machado were a poet, he might have compared it to a rainbow after a storm, one that rhymes with hope or even happiness. The evening passed beautifully. There was some music, plenty of talk, lots of wit, a simple cup of tea, a few encouraging glances, and a meaningful handshake at the end. With all that, how could he not dream the sweetest dreams? He did, and for him, Sunday felt like a day of rebirth. In the week that followed, they met 3 times. Eulalia seemed different now. The care and charm in her voice were miles away from the coldness and distance she had shown before. This change in her brought the natural effect it deserved. The young doctor felt different now. He was renewed, confident, and finally ready to act like a man. The 3rd time they met that week was at a party. They had just finished dancing a waltz and walked out to the house terrace, where the view was breathtaking, a panorama so beautiful it could turn even the coldest soul into a poet. There, under the stars, Machado finally spoke his heart, fully and clearly, telling Eulalia everything he felt. She listened with her eyes locked on his, clearly enchanted by his words. "Can I really believe what you're saying?" she asked. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he squeezed her hand tightly and looked at her with eyes more powerful than any speech ever written. Their bond was now official, their hearts united. Fernanda understood this at once when she saw them return to the ballroom. Her face turned sad and quiet. 10 minutes later, the judge stopped his card game to take his niece back to Santo Amaro. You, dear reader, probably expect the lovers to marry soon and forget all about that trip to Carangola until the end of the century. But just 15 days after that night on the terrace, Machado started the formal steps to get married. Many hearts broke when word spread that the widow Sixas had chosen him. Eulalia, for her part, felt prouder than if she were marrying the greatest hero in the country. Where did this sudden passion come from? What magic turned her heart so completely? Curious reader, the answer lies in the chapter title. Machado had seemed dull before, only because he lacked the spice of another person's desire. Eulalia saw his true worth through Fernanda's eyes. And the moment she realized he was loved by someone else, she wanted him for herself. There was an old saying on a famous sundial: "If I see you, others see me too." Michel could have flipped it: "If others see me, you see me too." And in doing so, he would have shown how well he understood the human heart, especially the heart of a woman.
Thank you for listening so far. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like our channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a new book is read. Have you heard of Machado de Assis? Machado de Assis, born in Rio de Janeiro in 1839, is considered one of the greatest writers in Brazilian literature and a master of psychological realism. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and short story writer whose works explore the complexities of human behavior with irony, subtlety, and deep introspection. Among his most famous novels are Dom Casmurro, which questions truth and memory, and the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, a satirical narrative told by a deceased man. Machado's literature often reflects the contradictions of Brazilian society, addressing issues like race, class, power, and identity in a sophisticated yet accessible style. Despite being born into poverty and facing racial prejudice, Machado de Assis rose to become the president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters and a symbol of literary excellence. His sharp wit and profound observations about society and the human soul make his works timeless and universally relevant. Today, he is recognized not only as a Brazilian icon, but also as a world-class author whose legacy continues to influence generations of writers and thinkers. Machado de Assis shows us that literature can be both elegant and critical, intimate and universal, humorous and profound. His stories remain as powerful and thought-provoking today as they were more than a century ago. Machado is a treasure of world literature, and through his voice, we discover the infinite layers of the human experience.